Hi writing class, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another lesson. For today's class, we're going to focus on lesson 46 and we're going to be looking at parts A and B. So once again, today's lesson will follow the same format as our last two lessons. In part A of today's lesson, you're going to have to put in the missing punctuation marks and missing capitals in the sentences. And then in part B, we're going to write the beginning half of the story together, and then you can be creative and write the middle and the ending of your story. So let's look at part A. So it tells us in the instructions that the writer forgot to punctuate some sentences that tell the exact words that somebody said. The writer also forgot to put commas in some sentences. So your job will be to read the passage carefully and to put in any missing capitals and punctuation marks. So let's read through the first part of the story together. We'll edit the sentences, and then I want you guys to do the rest on your own. So the first sentence says, Eric was climbing a tree. We don't need to add any commas, we don't have any exact words, we don't need to add any capitals, so that sentence will leave it alone. The next sentence says, he climbed to a very high branch. Once again, we don't need to change anything in that sentence, so we'll leave it alone. The next sentence says, he could see all the houses, trees, streets, and cars in the neighborhood from that branch. Right, so we have a list of three or more things, right? So he could see houses, he could see trees, streets, and cars. So there's 4 different things. So we have to make sure to put commas between those items. So what our new sentence should say is, he could see all the houses, comma, trees, comma, streets, and cars in the neighborhood from that branch. The next sentence says, look at me, he yelled. Right? We don't need to do anything with that sentence because we already have our quotation marks around the exact words, and then we have our comma. The next sentence says, Eric started to stand up, but then he fell. If we look, we have the word but. However, we have a comma before the word, so we don't need to add anything else. The next sentence says, as he was falling, he grabbed the branch. So we would need to add a comma in this sentence, but we already have it there, so we don't need to add it. The next sentence says, he hung onto the branch and looked down. We don't have any exact words, we don't need to add any capitals, and the sentence doesn't begin with a part that tells when, where, and it doesn't begin with if, although, or unless, so we can leave that sentence alone. And then the last sentence for that first paragraph says, Eric wanted to jump, but he was scared. So we need to add a comma in that sentence. Remember, before the word but, we need to always add in our comma. So what our new sentence should say is, Eric wanted to jump, comma, but he was scared. So now what I want you guys to do is to read the rest of the passage. Remember, you need to have quotation marks around exact words that somebody said. Don't forget to add in any commas. And don't forget that the first word inside of a quotation mark needs to begin with a capital letter. So you can pause the video now, finish off editing the sentences in part A, and then I'll see you in part B. So welcome back to part B. So let's look at part B on your worksheet. All of the pictures are blank. I'll tell you the first part of a story, and then you'll use that part to make up the rest of the story. So we also have some vocabulary words for you to use in your story. We have the word sunburned, fishing, terrible, caught, never, and strange. And then we have 4 checks to help us write our story. Check 1 asks us, is each sentence punctuated correctly? So remember to put quotation marks around exact words. Don't forget to begin each sentence with a comma. Don't forget to capitalize people's names. Check 2 asks us, are there any unclear words in your paragraphs? So once again, before we can use the words he, she, it, or they, we first have to introduce the person or the people or the thing in the previous sentence before we can use those words. If we don't do that, it'll be unclear. Check 3 asks us, did you write at least 3 sentences that need commas? Right, so there's multiple ways that we can add a comma in our sentence. If a sentence begins with a part that tells when, or a part that tells where, or if a sentence begins with the word if, although, or unless, we need to add a comma in that sentence. Also, if we combine 2 sentences with the word but, we need to make sure to add our comma before the word but. So 3 of your sentences in your story will need to have a comma. And then check 4 asks us, did you write at least 5 paragraphs? So remember, we need to start a new paragraph each time a new person speaks, or if we begin to, or if we're starting a new part of our story. Sorry about that. So I'll read what the first part of your story will be, and then I want you guys to use your awesome creativity to come up with the rest of your story. So let's listen to the first part of the story. Julia went on a fishing trip with her father and her brother Ray. Julia had never gone fishing before, but her father and her dad had gone fishing many times. Many strange things happened on the fishing trip. On the morning of the first day, Julia was the first to start fishing. So let's look over the first part of your story again. I've written it out here. Right, so the first part will be Julia went on a fishing trip with her father and her brother Ray. So remember to capitalize each person's name. The next sentence says, Julia had never gone fishing before, but her brother and her dad had gone fishing many times. Notice we needed to add a comma. We were combining 2 sentences with the word but. So we had to add the comma before the word but. Right, so the sentence once again says, Julia had never gone fishing before, comma, but her brother and her dad had gone fishing many times. The next sentence then says, many strange things happened on the fishing trip. We haven't had any exact words. That's why this is all going to be in one paragraph. The next sentence says, on the morning of the first day, and then we had to add a comma. Why did we add a comma? Because this is a part that tells when, right? So when did this happen? On the morning of the first day, comma, Julia was the first to start fishing. So now that we've written the first part of our story, I'll put it here so you can see. You can pause the video as well. So now that we've written the first part of the story, I want you to be creative and come up with what happened on that fishing trip. So you can use some of the words from the vocabulary box that's provided. And please also make sure to use your 4 checks. So once again, you can come up with what happens in the rest of the story. So awesome work, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you in our next class. Bye.